In this video, I will cover our first service of our Kona electric car, what was included, and my thoughts on Hyundai servicing schedule and business model approach going forwards. So stay tuned. Hi, John here. Our Kona electric was 1 year old on the 1st of July 2020. I've already made a video about our 1 year ownership, running costs and issues, and you'll find that in the link up here. But not yet, don't go there yet. Watch this one first and then you can go and see it. I will be watching, so I'll know if you've clicked that card. Do not click that card. Okay, so the Kona, being a year old and having just under 10,000 miles on it, it needed to be booked in for its first service. On Monday, the 22nd of June, I went online and booked in the service using Hyundai's online booking tool. I recorded these screens actually after the event, so the first service isn't available on that drop-down list because obviously I'd already booked it in and gone through the process. But hopefully you get the gist of how it works. You choose the when, the where, and the what you need doing to the car. So it's very simple, very straightforward. So I selected a while you wait service as I didn't think the service would take that long. The outcome of that process was the car was booked in for Friday the 3rd of July at 8:30. It's very efficient, quick and easy to do. So yeah, so far so good. The next day, I had a phone call from the service department at Spirit Hyundai in Northampton, my local dealers, which is where I'd booked the car into to have the service done. They said they had no availability for that chosen date for while you wait slots and blamed the website for offering the while you wait service appointment for that date at that time. The earliest they could do this option was Friday the 17th of July. And I said, yeah, that's fine. And booked it in for then. So the booking was rescheduled. Whilst on the phone, the lady asked if there was anything else that I needed doing to the car. I requested that it not be washed. I prefer to wash the cars myself rather than let others do it. Personal preference. I also asked for the Maps software to be updated as it was out of date. And I also inquired if they had the car down for a recall of the BMS, the battery management software. The lady looked on the system and there was nothing showing that needed to be done. I did say I didn't actually want the firmware updating, which she said was no problem and she'd make a note of it. She went on to say the service would take about an hour and then the map software update would also take about an hour. So allow 2 hours for the appointment, which was fine. The reason for not wanting the BMS update was I felt it would reduce the maximum charging capacity of the car. I'd read a few online forums and posts which indicated that that was the case. More about that in a minute, actually. A few days later, after booking in and that subsequent phone call with Spirit Hyundai, I had an email with the subject line Product Enhancement Inspection for KL19LVO, so the reg of our car. It doesn't say what the project enhancement is. However, a quick check online revealed various theories and hypotheses. The most plausible related to two Konas that had caught fire, one in Montreal, Canada, and one in Daegu, South Korea. The fires had happened back in May 2019. Hyundai have never released the reasons why from their investigations. 1 year on, and it appears that they still don't know the reason for the fires, or at least they don't want to make it public. However, on the 11th of June 2020, Hyundai released the following statement. Investigations in Canada and South Korea into the matter are ongoing. Customer safety is our highest priority at Hyundai, and we are constantly looking to improve our products. Hyundai Motor Company has since released an update to the vehicle's battery monitoring system while increasing the battery's performance and longevity. The update also contains additional diagnostic health monitoring to the high voltage battery and cells to ensure the continued quality performance of the vehicle. This service campaign is available globally, including Canada and the US, for all 2019 and certain 2020 models, at no charge to the customer. These enhancements have already been applied into new vehicle production. So I'm guessing this is what the recall product enhancement email I received was all about. It seems Hyundai and the service department don't actually communicate too well, as the service team knew nothing about this during the phone call on the 23rd of June. Our conversation was after this statement from Hyundai went public. Following this new information, it seems sensible to ensure that the update was done to the car when it was booked in for its service. I didn't want our car catching fire. I've experienced electrical car fire whilst driving, and it's not a pleasant experience. Thankfully, I always carry a fire extinguisher, and the electrical fire was quickly extinguished with little damage. I mentioned earlier that I always request that my cars aren't washed by the dealers. I always make sure the car is clean inside and out before taking it to the service department. I guess it's partly pride and looking after the car, but also the mechanic gets to work on a clean car, which is much easier and better for them. Also, I think if anybody's going to scratch the paint, then it should be me rather than a stranger. Do you want to see quickly how I actually wash my car? Yeah, you do. Sit back and enjoy. 3 minutes, 15 seconds, and go. That was fun to make, that little sequence. So back to the service. On Thursday the 16th of July, the day before the scheduled service, I received an SMS text which was a helpful reminder. And then on the Friday, the 17th of July, I arrived at the service department, parked outside. I was about 30 minutes early and waited for my allotted time. At 8:30, I went inside and booked in with the service administrator. The lady who was at the service desk confirmed what was going to happen, recapped on the points that I had made previously in the phone call, e.g. don't wash the car, update Maps software, and don't install the service update for the BMS. I said that after doing research since my request not to update it, I'd changed my mind and that I wanted it updated. Typical customer. The lady confirmed that this could be done and it would take about an hour to do the update. They said they would give me a call once it had all been done. I wandered off to amuse myself for 2 hours. I took some photos, sat about a bit in the sunshine. It was really quite pleasant. At 9:20 a.m, I received an SMS text stating the inspection had been completed and was available to view. I clicked on the link in the message and it showed me this. Apart from the video, which was pretty pointless, the checklist of items was interesting to see and had useful information on it. Tyre tread depth, brake pad thickness. This is all good. This is all a good record to have and then compare against on the next service to see how things have worn. However, as you can see, sort of 90% of the items on the list relate to ICE cars and a little bit superfluous for an electric vehicle. Well, going back to the brake pad thickness, I checked up on what the thickness of the pad is on a brand new brake pad. It's 11 millimeters on the front and 9 millimeters on the rear. And this means we've had zero wear on the rear pads because they were still at 9 millimeters and 1 millimeter of wear in 10,000 miles on the front pads. The service limit for the pads is 2 millimeters of thickness. So all things being equal, if wear continues at the current rate, the front pads will need replacing in about 8 years' time, or 80,000 miles, and the rears will never need replacing. They will never wear out. So we'll see. We'll keep our eye on that. On the day of the service, 10 a.m. came and went, and no phone call. Because they'd sent the SMS text at 9:20, 40 minutes ago, I got to wondering if they'd actually finished with the car and, done all of the software updates, even though they said they were going to call, perhaps they'd forgotten. So I had a bit of a doubt and a worry about it. So why send an SMS if it was still being worked on? And I decided I'd take a slow walk back to the service department, which was about 10 minutes away from where I was. So when I arrived, I inquired on progress, and the lady at the service desk went to check on the car, came back and said it would be about another 30 minutes. The software was being installed, and I then decided just to sit in reception, which was air conditioned, and wait for the car to be ready. The receptionist came back about 30 minutes later to bring me a printed copy of the vehicle health check report, a printed version of the one I'd previously seen online. And there was a little more detail as well because there was an underlying service sheet, which I'll go through in a minute. She let me know that everything was finished and handed me back the car key. So what was checked as part of the first service? Here's what they inspected, lubricated or completed. The key is in the top left corner of the page. There are actually a few acronyms on this list, which I had to Google to find out actually what they were. Complete VHC is Vehicle Health Check. Outstanding software updates using the GDS mobile is Global Diagnostic Solution. So let's pick out some of the key points. The Vehicle Health Check report, as I said earlier, looked at the tyre depth, front and rear, both offside and near side. It looks at spare, well, in terms of the expiry date of the spare kit. It looks at the front brakes, how much is left on the pads, did they stamp the service book, oil level not applicable, checked and torqued all wheel nuts, vehicle sanitised or PPE worn prior to work. They checked the aircon, heating and ventilation system, alternator, belt and battery, antifreeze strength, brake fluid condition, clutch, brakes, transmission, operation, cam belt check, drive shafts, oil and leaks, engine noise, smoke, engine oil level, exhaust system and catalyst, front suspension, fuel system, glass, mirrors, door locks, handbrake operation, horns, wipers, washers, hoses, clamps and cables, mandatory lights interior, mandatory lights front, mandatory lights rear, master cylinder servo and fluid, number plates, powered steering fluid, rear suspension, screen wash strength, seat belts, service indicator, steering, warning lights, water, oil, fluid levels, wheel alignment, wheel bearings and wheel trim. And then that's the vehicle health check form, and then on the service information screen, the 1 yearer, they inspected the cooling system, they inspected the specific gravity of the cooling system, they inspected the battery condition and the brake fluid. They completed a road test of the vehicle. These aren't in a particular order they did them in, I'm guessing, just the order they appear on the list. They completed the VHC, the Vehicle Health Checklist. They completed the outstanding software updates using GDS Mobile, as I mentioned earlier. They completed digital before service test with the GDS Mobile, reset the service reminder system, lubricated the locks and hinges, inspected the cabin filter, inspected the air conditioning system for leaks and coolant, checked tyre pressures, inspected the front and rear brake discs, completed a parking brake and adjust if necessary, inspected drive shaft and boots, front and rear wheel bearings were inspected, nuts and bolts on chassis and body inspected, and fluid leaks inspected. So that's the service. And that service costs me £68.04, which is a fair price really for the time taken and the checks that were undertaken. What still perplexes me though is why my Hyundai electric vehicle requires a 10,000 mile annual service. Our next service in another 10,000 miles, there's 2 additional checks that they're going to be doing on that, as well as all those previous checks I've gone through. The 2 things that they're going to do is replace the air cabin filter and the brake fluid. And that'll cost an additional £76.20, which includes all parts, fluids and labour, bringing a total of £144.24 for the second service, which you could class as a sort of major service if you like. But I guess what gets my goat is the perceived need for the very short service intervals. If I'd have purchased a Hyundai diesel, the service intervals would be twice as long, every 20,000 miles. So why is that, Hyundai? It just doesn't make any sense. Your electric cars are lumped in with petrol and hybrid cars and the service schedule for those rather than having their own service regime. Even the paperwork that they provide is ICE specific rather than created specifically for an EV service. And to me it smacks of Hyundai mandating a service and maintenance schedule to pacify the dealership to ensure that they earn some money from customers, because electric vehicle sales are basically handled online via Hyundai's website. The dealership has little or no input. They get payment for doing the pre-delivery inspection, the PDI handover with the customer, and that's about it really, which means that electric vehicle sales for them, they get very little return, even if they could sell them from the showroom floor. So there's no incentive for a dealership to recommend electric vehicles to customers. That they're basically pushing money out of the door if they do. The dealership can only make profit from servicing, selling parts and accessories to customers who've purchased electric cars, and they're losing out a revenue stream, and it's only really going to get worse for them. I've mentioned before the marketing and sales business model that Hyundai and many other traditional car manufacturers have chosen to adopt to sell their electric cars. And they are stuck in a very difficult position, which I believe that many of manufacturers will struggle to break free from. They need to continue to sell their ICE cars, which are profitable for them, but they also need to sell electric cars, which are not profitable for them due to the low volume and the higher manufacturing costs at present. Selling electric cars allows them to meet their environmental targets, but they have to walk a tightrope between continuing to sell ICE cars and offering electric cars. Let me explain that in a little bit more detail. They have to convince their existing customer base that ICE cars are still current and they should consider getting a new ICE car when their current one needs to be changed. But they also know they need to move to producing and selling more electric vehicles. That's where the future lays. Global and government legislation supports that. The science is saying so, as well as an ever-growing number of customers and pressure groups are all championing it as a way forwards. Although the group of EV converts is still very small in numbers compared to the general customer base, the vast majority of car buying public won't consider or even know about electric cars. We are certainly in a minority, and legacy car manufacturers want to keep it that way for as long as they can. Does anyone remember Gerald Ratner, the CEO of Ratner's Jewellers? It was a high street retail chain in the UK, selling jewellery, had about 2,500 stores nationwide, so it was a big concern. In 1991, he was a guest speaker at the Institute of Directors, attended by 6,000 business people and journalists. Asked how his company could sell a sherry decanter so cheap, he answered, "Because it's total crap," and explained its earrings were cheaper than a Marks and Spencer's prawn sandwich, but probably wouldn't last as long. He meant it as a joke. However, it wasn't taken that way. The company's shares dropped £500 million in a matter of days. Ratner's stores started to close, and it had to be rebranded, and they rebranded themselves as Signet Group, basically just to survive, and Gerald Ratner stepped down as CEO. Legacy car manufacturers can't announce to their existing customer base that electric cars are much better than their ICE cars. If they did, the sales of ICE cars would just plummet, and they would basically end up doing a Ratner, as it became known. They still have an expensive and expansive business operating model in place to manufacture, research and develop, design, market and advertise ICE cars. Their factories, production lines, supply chains, skilled workforces, dealerships and so on cannot be switched over to producing electric cars at the flick of a switch. And that's the thorny problem for dealerships. Where are they going to sit in the servicing, sales and, in that business model? How will that look in 5 to 10 years' time? Very different from how it is today, I suspect. I am convinced we will see fewer car manufacturers over the coming years as they try and fail to adapt to the rapidly changing market. Up until now, they have had the run of the market. They have dictated to us as customers what we buy. But the tables are slowly turning and the balance of power is moving towards the customer. The science around what we are doing to our planet and the legislation that supports that and the environmental targets are all helping to push that change. However, all that said and done, I've still got to get my electric car serviced every 10,000 miles. The Tesla, as I mentioned before, has no service schedule. There's no service book. Just common sense recommendations, really. Look for, do the safety checks, tyre rotation, change the fluid every 2 years and so on. What are your thoughts? How do you see car manufacturers in 5 years' time? What will they be like? What will their principal product offer be? How are they going to evolve from selling ICE cars in their current business operating model to selling electric cars without going bust, without doing a Ratner? Anyway, thanks for watching. I will see you on the next video. All right, cheers. Bye.